This
Okay, the topic for today is diabetes pharmacotherapy. Okay, management of diabetes. The major components of the treatment are diet, exercise, oral hypoglycemic therapy, and insulin therapy. Diet, medical nutrition therapy is recommended for all the patients with diabetes. For individuals with type 1, the focus is on regulating administration with a balanced diet to achieve and maintain healthy body weight. One, you always this aim that they have to increase. Okay, and type 2 is you have to restrict their calories to promote weight loss. Coming to exercise, in general, most patients with diabetes can benefit from increased activity. Okay, aerobic exercise is usually preferred. It is preferred to do 150 minutes per week. Okay, with no gaps more days between the two exercises. So, what does aerobic exercise will improve? It will improve insulin resistance, glycemic control, majority of individuals, reduces cardiovascular factors, contributes to weight loss or maintenance, and improve well-being. Start exercise slowly in previously sedentary patients. And one more relative contraindication for exercise is proliferative diabetic retinopathy because it can lead to rupture of the vessels, vitreous hemorrhage, and retinal detachment. Coming to insulin, it's an anabolic and anti-catabolic hormone. It plays major roles in proteins, carbohydrates, and fat metabolism. Endogenously produced insulin is cleaved from larger pro-insulin peptide in the beta cells to active peptide of insulin and C-peptide, which can be used as a marker for endogenous insulin production. Or commercially available insulin preparations contains only the active insulin peptide. This is the structure of insulin. Okay, it has two chains, A chain and B chain. A has 21 amino acids, B has 30 amino acids. It is connected by disulfide bonds. Disulfide bonds 3 in number. Sources of insulin is beta cells of pancreas. It secretes 30 to 40 units per day. Okay, there are two types. One is bovine and porcine. Bovine differs in 3 amino acids. Porcine differs in 1 amino acid. Three forms of insulin. One is enzyme modified porcine, proinsulin recombinant in bacteria, precursor insulin yeast recombinant. Now we are using mostly proinsulin recombinant in bacteria. This is the endogenous insulin. It's secreted from beta cells of pancreas. This is pancreas, what you see. This has four types of cells: alpha, beta, delta, and gamma. Alpha cells secrete 20% are of 20% and secrete glucagon. Beta cells are of 75% and secrete insulin. Delta cells are of 5% and secrete somatostatin. Somatostatin inhibits the release of growth hormone and TSH. Action of insulin on various tissue in the liver. Basically, always remember that insulin will reduce the serum glucose levels, will decrease the production of ketone bodies, and it will increase protein synthesis. Okay, so liver reduces glucose production, increase glycogenolysis, increase triglyceride synthesis, and protein synthesis. In muscle, increase glucose transport, increase glycolysis, increase glycogen deposition, increase in adipose tissue, increased glucose transport. In the muscle and adipose tissue, glucose transport is mainly with the help of GLUT4 receptor. Okay, and in adipose tissue, it also increased lipogenesis and lipoprotein lipase activity and decreased intracellular lipolysis. Types of insulin preparations. Basically, insulin is the main drug of choice in type 1 diabetes. Okay, in type 2 also you can give insulin, but before giving insulin, you try to start the patient on OHS. If the patient does not respond, then you give insulin. Okay, types of insulin are ultra short acting, intermediate acting, and long acting. Ultra short acting includes your Lispro, Aspart, and Glulysin. Short acting is your regular insulin. Intermediate acting is your NPH. Okay, then long acting is your Degludec, Detrimer, and Glargine. In out of these, Degludec is ultra long acting, in which it has T half of 42 hours. So this is the table which shows the differences between short acting and ultra short acting. Short acting is your, as I've told you, Lispro, Aspart, Aspart, and glulysin. Ultra short acting, that is. Short acting is like human insulin R or regular insulin. Uses is ultra short acting is similar to regular insulin, but designed to cover the limitations of regular insulin. Okay, and regular insulin is designed to control postprandial hyperglycemia and to treat emergency diabetic conditions. Physical characteristics: short acting is clear in solution at neutral pH. Even ultra short is clear solution. Chemical structure: short acting is hexamer, but ultra short acting is monomer. Route and time of administration: short acting can be both subcutaneous and IV. Subcutaneous, usually you give 30 to 45 minutes before meal. IV you give immediately. But ultra short acting, you give 5 minutes or not more than 15 minutes before meal, and IV in emergency diabetic ketoacidosis. Onset is short acting, the duration of onset of action is 30 minutes, ultra short acting is 15 minutes. Short acting peaks is around 2 to 4 hours. Ultra short acting peaks can be between half an hour, 1.5 hour, or 2 hours. Duration of action: short acting is 6 hours, ultra short acting is 3 to 4 hours, and usual administration: short acting is given 2 to 3 times a day. Ultra short acting also 2 to 3 times a day. Intermediate acting, that is NPH isophane. This is turbid in solution. Onset of action is around 2 to 3 hours, and peak is between 4 to 10 hours. Okay, and duration of action can be 10 to 14 hours. How do you mix? They are mixtures. That is combination of NPH and regular insulin. Okay, so 75 to 25. That is 75% and 25%. 70-30. Okay, 50-50. What we use regularly is 70-30, that is 70% of NPH and 30% of your regular. This 30% of regular will take care of your postprandial glucose. That NPH, whatever is given, 70% will take care of your fasting glucose. Intermediate acting, that is one more thing is lente insulin. It is turbid. It has 30% of semi-lentane and 70% of ultra-lentane. It's injected subcutaneously. Onset of action is 1 to 3 hours. Peak in serum levels is 4 to 8. Duration is 13 to 20 hours. Lentane and NPH insulins are roughly equivalent in biological effects. They're usually given once or twice a day. They are not used during emergencies. In emergencies, you give only or in emergencies only short acting or ultra short acting. Now coming to long acting insulin, that is insulin glargine. Onset of action is 2 hours, absorbed less rapidly than NPH and lente insulin. Duration is up to 24 hours, designed to overcome the deficiency of intermediate acting. And always remember that your long acting and ultra long acting insulins are your peak insulin. That means they maintain steady concentration over 24 hours. The advantages are constant circulating insulin over 24 hours with no pronounced peak, more safer than NPH and lente insulin due to reduced risk of hypoglycemia, especially nocturnal, clear solution that does not require resuspension before administration. First, how do you calculate? You calculate body weight in kgs divided by 2. For example, there is 80 kg diabetic patients require 40 unit. You start with in the morning 10 unit, in the afternoon 10 units, in the night 10 units. That is your short or ultra short acting. In the midnight, I mean at 11 p.m., you give 10 units. That you have to be either intermediate acting or a long acting. Dose adjustments. For dose adjustments, take fasting blood glucose the next day and adjust the dose of nighttime NPH accordingly. Keep on increasing the dose of NPH up by approximately 2 units until you achieve a normal fasting glucose of 80 to 110. Once fasting glucose has been controlled, check 6 that is, you have checked fasting 2 hours after breakfast, before lunch, 2 hours after lunch, before dinner, and 2 hours after dinner. So based on this, you can adjust the proportions of the short acting or ultra short acting which is to be given and NPH which is to be given. Now coming to complications, severe complications can be hypoglycemia, that is less than 50 microgram per deciliter, which is life-threatening. Overdose of insulin, excessive physical exercise of a meal is missed. Okay, then weight gain, local or systemic allergies. In case of allergies, if the allergy is mild to moderate, then you can give oral antihistamines. If the allergy is severe, then you can give systemic glucocorticoids or insulin desensitization. Lipodystrophy at injection sites. For lipodystrophy also, you can give thromboflow in subcutaneous okay, or you can try to inject insulin at different locations. I have to tell you what locations are usually insulin is given. So you have to change the insulin site frequently to prevent lipodystrophy, insulin resistance, and hypokalemia. Okay, this is again the table which is showing. Okay, so once again, ultra short acting are your Lispro, Aspart, and Luricin. Okay, then the generic, the brands which are available are Novolog, Apidra, Humalog. Humalog is a Lispro, Novolog is a Rapidra. Novolog is your Aspart, Apidra is your Luricin. Now coming to short acting, which is regular insulin and NPH, Lente, the suspension I've told you. Now coming to injection devices. Usually you give insulin via insulin syringe. There are two types of insulin syringe. One is 40 units insulin syringe, one is 100 units insulin syringe. Usually 100 units insulin syringe is usually used for long acting or ultra long acting, and 40 units is used for short and ultra short or intermediate acting insulin. But now, since to make it very easier, insulin pens are available. Okay, faster and easier than syringe, improve patient's attitude and adherence, have accurate dosing mechanisms, appropriate technique is critical, air shot and 6 seconds short time. That means once you after you give your insulin shot, you have to maintain for 6 seconds and before you remove the pen. Coming to oral hypoglycemic, before that I have to tell you how you give insulin. Okay, the mode is basically subcutaneous. The sites are now not around the umbilicus, from the umbilicus almost 1 to 2 inches, or your width of your four fingers, that much width away from the umbilicus. You have to give in circular motion. That means today you give at one place, tomorrow at the other place, then the other place. Okay, the apart from that, you have to can give in lower and outer part of your thigh, your upper arm. Okay, but arm is usually not preferred. Okay, so preferred sides are your abdomen and lower part of the thigh. Now coming to oral hypoglycemic drugs. The oral hypoglycemic drugs, the mechanism of actions are very varied. Okay, now we'll go in each drug wise, how it acts, what are the side contraindications, etc. Now coming to the first, which is sulfonylureas. Sulfonylureas are insulin secretagogues. That means this is the secretion of insulin from the beta cells. Okay, as I have told you before, sulfonylureas binds to receptor which is present in ATP sensitive potassium channels and inhibit the ATP sensitive potassium channels, which in turn leads to depolarization of the cell, influx of the calcium, and secretion of the insulin from the pancreatic beta cell. Okay, so the primary mechanism of action is enhancement of insulin secretion. It binds to specific receptor on pancreatic beta cells, as binding inhibits the ATP potassium channels, leading to depolarization and decreased potassium influx. Depolarization, which in turn leads to opening of voltage gated calcium channels and allowing an inward movement of calcium. Okay, increased intercellular calcium causes translocation of secretory granules of insulin to the cell surface and exocytosis of the granule of insulin. Elevated secretion of insulin from the pancreas basically is secreted into the portal vein and subsequently suppresses hepatic glucose production. This is the cell. There are two types of insulin generations. One is first and one is second. In first, you have tolbutamide, chloropropamide, acetohexamide, and tolzamide. Okay. In second, there are two types. One is short acting, that is glimepiride. Long acting, that is that is glibenclamide, and glimepiride. There one more thing like gliclazide, glipizide, etc. Okay. Remember that glimepiride is both short and long acting. Okay. And glibenclamide is long acting. Okay. The difference between first generation and second. The difference between a first generation and second generation are, first generations there are a lot of drug to drug interactions and they can cause higher chances of hypoglycemia, and they're usually longer acting. Okay, but coming to second generation, they're shorter acting, they have less chances of hypoglycemia and drug to drug interactions. This is the table which will show the sulfonylurea medications. One is acetohexamide, chloropropamide, tolzamide, tolbutamide. Okay, now coming to second generation, glipizide, glyburide, glimepiride. Okay, side effects are nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, diarrhea, hypoglycemia. It's very common. Okay, dilutional hyponatremia, which is basically caused by chloropropamide, along with it can cause disulfiram like reactions with alcohol. Okay, the other important side effect is weight gain. They can lead to blood dyscrasias like agranulocytosis, hemolytic anemia, thrombocytopenia, cholestatic obstructive jaundice, dermatitis, muscle weakness, headache, vertigo, and there's increased cardiovascular mortality with long-term use. Contraindications: one is your pregnancy and lactation, one is the parenchymal disease of liver or kidney, and type 1 diabetes. Now coming to your next drug of choice, that is your biguanides. Okay, in biguanides there are two types. Previously we can use fenformin, butformin, and previously, fenformin and butformin are used, but they are removed from the market due to high incidence of lactic acidosis. And now currently we are using only metformin. Okay, metformin, how does it act? It basically increases the hepatic glucose. It decreases the hepatic glucose production and increases the peripheral utilization of the glucose, GLUT4 receptors. Okay, it has no direct effect on beta cells through insulin, though insulin levels are reduced, reflecting increasing insulin sensitivity. Okay, so basically what biguanide is an insulin synthesizer, and other mechanisms are it can inhibit the absorption of glucose from the intestine. Okay, these are the actions. As I've told you, it can inhibit glucose absorption from the intestine. It inhibits hepatic gluconeogenesis, but it increases the glucose uptake by the muscle. However, you have given after meals 25 250 to 500 mg twice or thrice a day. The maximum you can give in a day is around 2 to 3 grams per day. Increase gradually if required in 1 to 2 weeks. The side effects includes most your nausea, vomiting, metallic taste, vitamin B12 deficiency, lactic acidosis, okay, and diarrhea, which mainly occurs because of bile acid malabsorption. Okay, then to prevent your GI side effects, one thing is you have to start the dose slowly and increase the dose. Second thing is you have to give extended release or sustained release. That means it will slowly release small quantity of the drug into the blood and prevent it from the side effects. In case of diarrhea, that is because of bile acid malabsorption, you give cholestyramine. Advantages are it can lead to weight loss. Diarrhea, discomfort, nausea, metallic taste in this one. Contraindications are basically hepatic impairment, but in renal impairment, it's not absolute contraindication. You have to check the GFR levels. If the GFR levels is less than 45, you have to do dose modifications. If it is less than 30, then you have to stop giving the drug. One third drug is alpha glucosidase inhibitors. These are currently two things are available. Okay, one is acarbose and voglibose. How does it act? It basically inhibits the absorption of the glucose in the intestine. That is, it inhibits enzymes which is responsible for breaking down of sucrose and complex carbohydrates. Okay, they do not cause any malabsorption of the nutrients. The net effect of this action is to reduce postprandial blood glucose. They don't have any role to play with lactose absorption, so that's why it does not cause lactose intolerance and diarrhea. Efficacy is postprandial glucose concentrations are reduced while fasting is relatively unchanged. Okay, mainly affects postprandial. Well, that's all. And should be used in those patients who have high postprandial levels. Now, currently, what we are using is voglibose. We have to start at 0.2 mg TID, can be increased to 0.6 mg TID. Okay, and always remember that this medication should be taken with your first spoon or first quantity of the food, so that the enzymes which are present will activate and responsible for the action of the medication. Alpha glucosidase inhibitors. Here voglibose is not given, but acarbose also. Sorry, here voglibose is not given. Acarbose also can is used, but the main commonest side effects are your postprandial fullness or abdominal bloating sensation. So that's why usually many people does not prefer this drug. So the adverse effects are flatulence, bloating, abdominal discomfort, and diarrhea. Okay. But what are the main causes of side effects basically is distal intestinal degradation of undigested carbohydrates by microflora, which results in gas production. One thing. Second thing is because the degradation of sucrose and complex carbohydrates are not uh, taking place, there will be increased load of these sucrose and complex carbohydrates subsequent part of the intestine. Then short-acting insulin betagogues, okay, though binding site is adjacent to the binding site of sulfonylureas, okay, they're called as netiglinide and dapagliflozin. The action is similar to sulfonylureas only. Adverse effects are same, like hypoglycemia, weight gain, and cardiovascular instability. Okay, these are the current medications for treatment of diabetes and their commonest side effects. Like there are few things which I'm supposed to tell you still. I will tell you later. Sulfonylureas, that is hypoglycemia, weight gain. Meglitide, hypoglycemia, weight gain. Metformin is GI intolerance. Thiazolone, edema, weight gain. Alpha glucosidase inhibitors, GI intolerance. Insulin, hypoglycemia, and weight gain. There's something like role of GLP-1 and GIP-1. That is, GLP is glucagon, right? GIP-1 is glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide. They are secreted in response to food intake. That is glucose-dependent mechanism. Okay, GIP and GLP increases insulin biosynthesis and secretion. Okay, GLP-1 inhibits glucagon secretion, and both will lower the blood glucose sugar levels. Basically, these are the small peptides which are produced by the cells of small intestine. GLP-1 is secreted by L cells of jejunum and ileum. Uh, GIP-1 is secreted by K cells of large intestine. This is how it acts. That is, these are secreted in response to the glucose. These are secreted only when the glucose levels increases more than the fasting blood glucose. In the previous picture, what I have showed you, like last time I taught you how insulin is produced in the islet cells. I have told you there's one place where is where incretins come and act. Those are the GLP-1 and GIP-1. Okay, so those act binds to the pancreatic beta cell and causes release of the insulin from the pancreatic beta cells. And normally, whatever the GLP-1 and GIP-1 are produced in our body are very short acting. That is, they have action for almost only 3 to 5 minutes or maximum 7 minutes to prevent the degradation of the GLP, GLP-1. It's basically degraded by DPP-4 enzyme. Okay, to prevent the degradation of these, DPP-4 enzyme inhibitors are used. That is one mechanism to increase the action of GLP-1 and GIP-1. Second mechanism is to use the recombinant form so that the duration of action is longer. Okay, incretins, gut hormones that enhance insulin secretion in response to food. Glucose-dependent insulin secretion. Medications affecting the incretin system are GLP-1 is exenatide. There is exenatide, albiritide, glutatide, liraglutide, semaglutide. Okay, out of this, semaglutide is the only GLP-1 which is taken orally. Remaining all are taken intravenously. Okay, then coming to DPP-4, there's sitagliptin, vildagliptin, saxagliptin, teneligliptin, liragliptin. Okay, out of these, commonly used is a teneligliptin, and this one, teneligliptin is the drug which is used in renal failure. That is exenatide, the first incretin therapy related available for patients with type 2 diabetes. Naturally occurring peptide from the saliva of glial monster, has approximately 50% amino acids homologous with GLP-1. This is the same thing what I've told you. So the drugs which belongs to this class are sitagliptin, vildagliptin, saxagliptin, linagliptin, tilogliptin, gemigliptin, alogliptin. Okay. Adverse effects is nasopharyngitis, headache, nausea, hypersensitivity reactions, and pancreatitis. And GLP-1 analogs, always remember that you have to be very careful as they can lead to medullary thyroid carcinoma. So you don't give in patients having any thyroid problems or men, that is multiple endocrine neoplasia or any pancreatic disorders. Now coming to SGLT2 inhibitors, prevent reabsorption of glucose in blood that is filtered through your kidneys, therefore facilitating glucose excretion in your urine. Okay, so basically SGLT2 is the receptor which is present in the kidney by which the kidneys reabsorb the glucose is reabsorbed. These inhibitors inhibit the SGLT2, which in turn prevent reabsorption of the glucose and causes excretion of the glucose. The medications include canagliflozin, dapagliflozin, empagliflozin, ertugliflozin. The side effects are your UTI, fungal infections, genital region. They have euglycemic decay, hypoglycemia. Next, coming to thiazolinidones, that is, they are referred to as glitazones. Examples include pioglitazone and rosiglitazone, as and troglitazone. Okay, troglitazone is the prototype drug, but it is banned basically due to its effect on the liver. It is hepatotoxicity. It can lead to hepatocellular carcinoma. Now, in case if we are using it, we are using only pioglitazone. How does it work? It works binding to peroxisome proliferator activated receptor gamma, which are primarily located in fat cells and vascular cells. Pioglitazone is given for about 6 months, reduces HbA1c values to around 1.5 percentage, and reduces fasting plasma glucose by approximately 60 to 70 milligrams per deciliter. Okay, the onset is very slow. It usually takes 3 to 4 months of the therapy for the onset of actions. And thiazolinidones is one more class of the drugs which can cause increase. It's an insulin sensitizer. So, and out of the all the drugs what we have studied till now, what are the drugs which are insulin sensitizers are your metformin and thiazolinidones. Insulin secretagogues are your sulfonylureas and non-sulfonylurea drugs. Okay, which inhibits your intestinal absorption of the drugs are your alpha glucosidase inhibitors, which causes increased renal excretion of the glucose is your SGLT2 inhibitors. Okay, and the other class of the drugs like DPP4 inhibitors and GLP1 and GIP1 analogs are also your insulin secretagogues. Okay. Pioglitazone increases bladder cancer. Rosiglitazone increases risk of cardiovascular events. Okay, this is the antihypertensive major sites of action. As I have told you, GI tract, acarbose inhibit carbohydrate malabsorption. Okay, and muscle and fat injected insulin. Sulfonylureas causes pancreas to secrete insulin, and repaglinide also has the same mechanism of action. Metformin acts directly on the insulin and cause insulin sensitizer. That is one, it can reduce hepatic glucose production. Okay. Second thing is it inhibits uptake of the glucose via GL4 receptors by the muscle. Okay. And one more thing you have to remember is there are few medications which will reduce. There are few medications and the HbA1c reductions I have to tell you. Okay, first thing is in the mode of therapy which will reduce the HbA1c maximum is your medical nutrition therapy, that is 1 to 3%, followed by your metformin and sulfonylureas, which is 1 to 2%. Okay, then coming to thiazolinidones, which has HbA1c reduction of 0.5 to 1.4%. Non-sulfonylureas, that is repaglinide, netaglinide, has 0.5 to 1%. Then SGLT2 inhibitors has 0.5 to 1%. Then lastly, which has least are your DPP4 inhibitors and alpha inhibitors, which has 0.5 to 0.5%. Out of the medication which predominantly will reduce your fasting blood glucose is your metformin, but sulfonylureas will reduce both your fasting and postprandial, but predominantly postprandial. And there are two group of medications which will predominantly reduce the postprandial, that is alpha glucosidase inhibitors and DPP4 inhibitors. Okay, this is oral medication. Now coming to parenteral, insulin, none. GLP-1 agonist or analogs, HbA1c reduction is 1 to 2%. Okay, there are two types of GLP-1 analogs. One is short acting and one is long acting. The short acting ones take care of the postprandial blood sugar, while the long acting ones take care of your fasting blood sugars. Okay, in out of the both all the medications which are short acting and which are long acting are the short acting ones are your exenatide and liraglutide. Okay, remaining ones are long acting. Now coming to one more drug called amylin agonist. Amylin is used both in type 1 and type 2 diabetes mellitus. Okay, how does it access? Is basically decreases secretion of glucagon. It reduces your appetite. It delays the emptying time, which in turn will cause reduction of the blood glucose levels. Okay, and amylin also takes care of your postprandial blood glucose levels. This is in short about your diabetes treatment. Okay, now there are few questions which you have to remember. First thing is, which are the drugs which are, I mean, that is anti-hyperglycemic agents which are used both in type 1 and type 2 diabetes. One is your insulin, then your amylin, then you have alpha glucosidase inhibitor. This is one question. Second question is, which are the drugs which causes weight loss? That is your metformin, thiazole, metformin, amylin, GLP-1 agonist, and SGLT2 inhibitors are those which causes your weight loss. Okay. Then what are the drugs which causes your weight gain? That is sulfonylureas and thiazolidones. Sorry, I have told you insulin is weight loss, but insulin is weight gain. Okay. So weight gain is sulfonylureas, insulin, and thiazolidones. But this weight gain is only partial due to anabolic action of insulin and decreased glycosuria. Now coming to the drugs which are given in kidney disease. Okay, because most of the anti-hyperglycemic agents are contraindicated in renal disease. There are only few drugs which are given in kidney disease. One is your gliclazide, then pioglitazone, and alpha glucosidase inhibitors, linagliptin. Okay, what are the two drugs which are safe? One is SGLT2 inhibitors and GLP-1 analogs. Liver safe are your metformin, okay, SGLT2 inhibitors and DPP4 inhibitors. Okay, then there are a few newer drugs. Just know the names and drugs, and there are few newer mechanisms also by which insulin is, I mean, diabetes is cured. One is your bile acid binding disease, that is Covacelum. Then your bromocriptine, hydroxychloroquine, telmisartan, locazepin, imiglimin, ruboxytorin, epleristat, dual PPA gamma plus alpha agonist, smart insulins. That means they have glucose sensor. When like they'll have a device which will sense the glucose levels in the blood. And one more thing is they'll have a like glucose reservoir or insulin reservoir in which insulin is secreted directly into the serum. Insulin patch, then glucokinase activator. Okay, and one more other two mechanisms are your islet cell transplantation and artificial pancreas. Artificial pancreas is, they'll have a biosensor, there'll be an app located in your phone. They'll have two chambers which has both insulin and glucagon. It will act as a normal pancreas, but it will present outside the body. Then coming to islets and transplantation, one is auto transplantation and one is allo transplantation. Auto transplantation is, usually not done in type 1 diabetes. Following pancreatectomy, islet cells are purified and injected by a catheter into the patient's liver within hours, 1 to 2 hours. Allotransplantation is from deceased organ donor. Islet cells are transfused into the portal vein after transplantation, and it's usually done in type 1 diabetes. Auto in type 2, allo in type 1. Okay, and one more thing is, there are few complications which are reversed after transplantation and few which are not reversed after transplantation. The one which are reversed are your nephropathy and neuropathy. And nephropathy only in stages, that is early microalbuminic stages, it is reversed. If not, it's not reversed. And the things which are not reversed are retinopathy and peripheral vascular disease. And if all these fail, then you should do bariatric surgery. Okay, that will basically help in reduction of the glucose levels. There is indication for bariatric surgery. One is, we should be type 2 diabetes, more than 30 kg per meter square of BMI, who does not respond to 2 to 3 OHS. Okay, as I've told you briefly about the treatment, and there are few indications where you have to start insulin therapy in type 2 diabetes. Okay, one is OHA failure. OHA failure is after giving optimal dosage of 2 to 3 OHAs. If the fasting blood sugar is more than 150, post-mortem blood sugar is more than 200, and HbA1c is more than 7, then it's called OHA failure. Okay, there is an indication for starting of treatment. Comorbid conditions like severe systemic infection or sepsis, acute MI or unstable angina, decay or hyperosmolar state, diabetic kidney disease, pregnancy or gestation diabetes. These are the other conditions also where you have to give insulin as your first line of therapy. Okay. And OHA failure is of two types. One is primary and secondary. Primary is without starting any treatment. Secondary is after starting the treatment with OHS if they don't respond properly to the medication. So this is the all for diabetes management. Type 2 diabetes, diet and physical activity. Failure, if it is overweight, you start metformin, acarbose, or thiazolidines. If it is non-obese, you can start metformin or insulin secretagogues. If there is no proper control, then you add other medications. If in spite of 3 OHs also, if it is failure, then you start insulin sensitizers. But along with the medications, you have to make sure you start the patient on medical nutritional therapy and